That's all you need today.
Interesting choice of service.
Be grateful you're up here.
You're creating problems now.
Maybe first class isn't for you.
Keep talking.
Rebecca Hayes and Kevin Miller are suspended. What is happening?
Now you know who I am.
The moldy sandwich hit Ethan Brooks's first-class tray with a soft, ugly slap. For 1 second, nobody moved. Not the businessman across the aisle holding a crystal glass of champagne. Not the elderly couple whispering over their menu. Not the flight attendant standing over Ethan with a smile too sharp to be accidental. Rebecca Hayes looked down at him as if she had done him a favor. "There you go, sir," she said. "That should be enough." Ethan stared at the sandwich. The bread was dry at the edges. One corner had a faint green stain. The small paper cup beside it held apple juice that looked warm before it even touched his lips. Around him, Liberty Air's first-class cabin glowed with polished comfort. Cream leather seats, soft gold light, the quiet clink of silverware, the low hum of the aircraft waiting at the gate at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Everyone else had real plates. Seared salmon, warm bread, wine poured with care. Ethan had been given food that looked like it had been forgotten in the back of a staff refrigerator. He lifted his eyes slowly. Rebecca did not flinch. She was 44, blonde, perfectly groomed, with the controlled posture of someone who had spent years learning how to smile while judging people. Her uniform was pressed. Her scarf was neat. Her eyes were cold. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Ethan heard the question beneath the question. "Are you going to make trouble?" He breathed in through his nose, slowly. At 52, Ethan Brooks had learned that anger could be used against a man faster than any weapon. Especially a black man sitting in a seat. Some people still believed he had to explain. "No," he said quietly. "Not yet." Rebecca's smile tightened. She turned away before he could say more. Across the aisle, a silver-haired passenger named Robert Whitman paused with his fork in midair. He glanced from Ethan's tray to his own meal, then back again. His brow folded with the look of a man old enough to recognize cruelty when it tried to dress itself as procedure. Ethan noticed, but he said nothing. His right hand moved under the tray table. Not quickly, not dramatically, just a small motion, hidden by the fold of his charcoal suit jacket. His thumb tapped his phone once. Then again, the secure Liberty Air executive app opened without a sound. A small blue indicator appeared. Cabin surveillance active. Ethan looked toward the front galley, where Rebecca leaned close to another crew member and whispered something that made him smirk. She thought the curtain protected her. It did not. 3 months earlier, Ethan had argued for this system in a boardroom full of executives who wanted cleaner data on premium cabin service. Not punishment. Not spying. Accountability. A way to understand what passengers really experienced when no manager was watching. What none of the crew knew was simple. Ethan Brooks was not just sitting in first class. He was one of the major private investors behind Liberty Air. He had helped fund the training programs, the upgraded fleet, the new service standards Rebecca was now violating in front of a cabin full of witnesses. But Ethan had not boarded this flight to reveal himself. He had boarded like any other passenger. Seat 2A, New York to San Francisco, a quiet afternoon flight, a few hours to review reports. Maybe one glass of Macallan 18 before takeoff. Instead, he was staring at moldy bread while the woman who served it laughed behind a curtain. His phone buzzed softly. A message from Natalie Price, his executive assistant. "Safe travels. Board packet is updated." Ethan typed back with measured fingers, documenting a service issue on Flight 347. Stay available. He set the phone down. The cabin around him continued as if nothing had happened. Passengers sipped. Silverware touched porcelain. Someone laughed softly near the window. But something had shifted. Ethan could feel it in the air. Rebecca had made an assumption. Now she was building a pattern. And Ethan, calm as stone, was going to let the truth finish what her prejudice had started. Ethan did not touch the sandwich. He studied it the way a surgeon studies a wound, carefully, without panic. The green stain on the bread was small, but it was there, a faint bloom near the crust. Something that could be explained away by someone who wanted to explain it away. That was always how these things worked. A cold tone could be called stress. A missing drink could be called oversight. A bad meal could be called inventory. One moment alone meant nothing, but a pattern had weight. Rebecca returned from the galley carrying a silver tray. She passed Ethan without slowing and leaned toward Robert Whitman with practiced warmth. "Mr. Whitman, would you care for another pour of the Chardonnay?" Robert looked at his glass. It was still half full. Then he looked at Ethan's untouched tray. "No, thank you," he said. His voice was polite, but something in it had hardened. Rebecca noticed. Her smile flickered for only a breath. Then she moved on. Ethan pressed the call button. A soft chime sounded above his seat. Rebecca kept walking. He waited. The cabin filled with the sounds of privilege being served well. Ice dropped into crystal. Warm plates slid onto linen. Someone laughed about a golf trip in Pebble Beach. A woman behind Ethan thanked the crew for remembering her gluten-free roll. 5 minutes passed. Then 7. Ethan pressed the button again. This time, Rebecca turned from the aisle with visible irritation. She walked back slowly, as if he had interrupted something important. "Yes, sir?" Her voice was quiet enough to sound professional, sharp enough to cut. Ethan lifted the edge of the sandwich with his fork. "There appears to be mold on this bread," he said. "I also pre-ordered the chef's special when I booked this ticket. I have the confirmation." Rebecca barely glanced down. "I do not see mold." Ethan paused. The words were simple, but the insult behind them was older than both of them. She was asking him to doubt what was in front of his own eyes. He turned the plate slightly so the green mark faced the aisle. "It is visible." Rebecca's jaw tightened. "Sir, if you are unhappy with the available meal, I can offer you a snack box from the back." The back. Robert Whitman set his fork down. Across the aisle, a woman in a navy cardigan lowered her book. Her eyes moved from Rebecca to Ethan. She said nothing, but her face changed. It was the look of someone realizing she was witnessing something she might later regret staying silent about. Ethan kept his voice even. "I am asking for the meal I paid for. The same level of service everyone else in this cabin is receiving." Rebecca leaned closer. Her perfume was floral and cold. "Everyone cannot always get exactly what they want," she said. "Sometimes people need to be grateful for what is available." The cabin seemed to tighten around the words. Ethan felt his pulse in his throat. Not fear, control. He had heard versions of that sentence in hotel lobbies, boardrooms, restaurants, golf clubs, banks. Be grateful. Be quiet. Do not ask for the same thing too loudly. He looked up at Rebecca. "I am not asking for special treatment," he said. "I am asking for equal treatment." For the first time, Rebecca's face changed completely. The service mask slipped. Underneath it was annoyance. Not embarrassment, not concern. Annoyance that he had named the thing she wanted to keep hidden. A younger male flight attendant appeared behind her. His name tag read Kevin Miller. "Everything okay here?" Kevin asked, but his eyes had already chosen a side. Rebecca crossed her arms. "This passenger is unhappy with his meal and becoming argumentative." Ethan looked at Kevin calmly. "I have not raised my voice. I pointed out spoiled food and asked for the meal I ordered." Kevin glanced at the sandwich. Too fast, too dismissive. "Sir, meal availability can change mid-flight." "We are still at the gate," Ethan said. Kevin blinked. Robert Whitman made a low sound, almost a cough, but not quite. The woman with the book pressed her lips together. Rebecca's cheeks flushed. "That is not the point," she said. "No," Ethan replied. "I think it is exactly the point." His phone buzzed again on the tray table. Natalie. He did not pick it up immediately. Rebecca's eyes dropped to the screen, then back to his face. Kevin leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Sir, I need you to cooperate with the crew. We have a full cabin, and we cannot have disruptions in first class." There it was, the shift, from customer to problem, from passenger to threat. Ethan slowly picked up his phone and opened Natalie's message. Initial check found prior complaints involving premium cabin service. Several mentioned Rebecca Hayes by name. More coming. Ethan read it once. Then he placed the phone face down. He looked at the sandwich, then at Rebecca, then at Kevin. "Please bring the purser," he said. Rebecca gave a short laugh through her nose. Kevin's expression hardened. Behind them, the galley curtain moved slightly, and Ethan saw another crew member watching. The aircraft had not even left New York. But the truth was already boarding. The purser arrived with the kind of smile people use when they want a problem to disappear without ever touching the truth. Her name was Angela Reed, late 40s. Dark hair pinned tightly at the back of her head, a polished uniform, a tablet pressed against her ribs like a shield. "Mr. Brooks," she said, glancing at her screen before looking at him. "I understand there is some concern about your meal." Concern, Ethan caught the word. Not complaint, not spoiled food, not discrimination. Concern. Rebecca stood half a step behind Angela, arms folded just low enough to look casual. Kevin lingered near the aisle watching the surrounding passengers as if he were measuring who might become inconvenient. Ethan gestured to the tray. "This was served to me in first class," he said. "The bread appears to be spoiled. I also did not receive the meal or beverage I pre-ordered." Angela looked down. For a moment her eyes betrayed her. She saw it, the green stain, the curling bread, the apple juice in the paper cup. Then her face smoothed over. "I apologize if the presentation was not up to expectation," she said. Robert Whitman leaned back slowly, his eyes narrowing. Ethan's voice stayed calm. "This is not a presentation issue." Angela shifted her weight. "Of course. What I can do is offer you a fresh option from our business class menu once we are airborne." The offer hung there like a smaller insult dressed as a solution. "Why business class?" Ethan asked. Angela blinked. "I am sorry. This is a first-class ticket. Everyone around me received first-class service. Why am I being offered a downgrade after being served spoiled food?" A few heads turned again. The woman in the navy cardigan had stopped pretending to read. A younger man near the window lowered his headphones. Even the elderly couple across the aisle had gone quiet. Angela felt the cabin listening. Her smile grew thinner. "Mr. Brooks, we are doing our best to accommodate you." "No," Ethan said softly. "You are trying to quiet me." That sentence landed cleanly. Rebecca's eyes flashed. Angela lowered her voice. "Sir, I need to ask you to be mindful of the cabin environment." The cabin environment was peaceful until I asked why I was being treated differently. Kevin stepped forward. "Sir, that is not what is happening." Ethan turned to him. "Then explain what is happening." Kevin opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because the facts were sitting on the tray. Mold, paper cup, missing order, selective warmth, selective service. Rebecca broke the silence. "Some passengers have more detailed profiles with us," she said. "We prioritize frequent premium customers." Ethan looked at her for a long second. "I am a platinum executive member." Rebecca's mouth tightened. Angela quickly tapped her tablet. Her eyes moved. Her fingers stopped. There it was. The record: Ethan Brooks, platinum executive. Seat 2A, Macallan 18. Chef special, paid first-class fare, no upgrade, no voucher, no mistake. Angela's throat moved. Rebecca saw it too, and for the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. Only for a second. Then pride covered it. "Well," Rebecca said almost under her breath, "status does not always mean people know how to act." Robert Whitman set his napkin down with deliberate care. "Excuse me," he said. Everyone looked at him. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a man who had run companies, raised children, lost friends, and learned not to waste words. "I have watched this gentleman since boarding. He has been polite. He has not raised his voice. He has asked reasonable questions. And from where I sit, he has been treated in a way no one else in this cabin has been treated." Angela's face tightened. "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but crew matters are handled by crew." Robert did not look away, then handle it properly. The cabin went still. Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief, not victory. Something quieter. The human comfort of not being alone. Rebecca leaned toward Angela and whispered, "He is making everyone uncomfortable." But the microphone above the galley arch caught it. So did the camera. So did Ethan's phone. Angela heard it too. Her eyes flicked toward Rebecca, warning her to stop talking. Too late. Ethan picked up his phone and typed one message to Natalie. "Pull all complaints involving Rebecca Hayes, Kevin Miller, and premium cabin discrimination. Notify legal quietly." Natalie replied almost instantly. "Already started. Diane Lawson in HR is standing by." Ethan placed the phone down. Angela forced one last smile. Mr. Brooks, we will review this after departure. For now, please accept the business class meal. Ethan looked at the tray, then at the passengers watching, then at Angela. No, he said. One word, clear, controlled, final. I want this documented before we leave the gate. Rebecca laughed softly. Kevin stiffened. Angela's face went cold, and somewhere beyond the cockpit door, the captain was about to hear a version of the story that was not true. Captain Richard Lawson came down the aisle like a man walking into a problem he had already decided how to solve. He was 58, broad-shouldered, silver at the temples, with a face shaped by years of command. Passengers straightened as he passed. Crew members stepped aside. In an airplane cabin, a captain did not need to raise his voice to own the room. Rebecca stood near the galley with her arms tucked close, playing wounded professionalism. Kevin hovered beside her, jaw set. Angela Reed held her tablet in both hands, but her eyes avoided Ethan's tray. Mr. Brooks, Captain Lawson said, stopping beside seat 2A. My crew tells me you are refusing service and creating a disturbance before departure. Ethan looked up slowly. The cabin lights reflected in his dark eyes. His hands rested calmly on the armrests. That is not accurate, Captain. Rebecca gave a small breath behind him. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. Lawson heard it and took it as confirmation. I understand you are unhappy with your meal, he said. But we have a full aircraft, an assigned departure window, and federal regulations requiring passengers to comply with crew instructions. Ethan nodded once. I understand federal regulations. I also understand that asking why I was served spoiled food is not a safety violation. A murmur moved through first class. Lawson looked at the tray for the first time. His eyes landed on the sandwich, then moved away quickly, as if seeing it too clearly would complicate his authority. Food concerns can be handled through customer care after landing. Robert Whitman leaned forward. Captain, with respect, the man is not exaggerating. Lawson turned to him, his expression softening just a shade. Sir, I appreciate your input, but I need passengers to remain seated and allow the crew to do their jobs. Robert's mouth tightened. He sat back, but his eyes stayed on Ethan. That small difference was not lost on anyone. The captain had offered Robert courtesy. He had offered Ethan control. Ethan felt the old ache rise in him. Not surprise. Never surprise. Just the exhaustion of having to prove the obvious while staying calm enough to be believed. Captain Lawson, Ethan said, before you make any decision, I would like you to review what actually happened. I have been denied my pre-ordered beverage, served a downgraded meal, given spoiled bread, and when I questioned it, I was described as disruptive. Rebecca stepped forward. That is not true. He has been challenging us since boarding. Ethan turned his head slightly. I asked for the service I paid for. You kept pressing the call button, Kevin said. Because no one answered. Angela's fingers tightened around her tablet. Lawson lifted a hand. Enough, one word. Hard. Final. The cabin fell silent. The engine hum seemed louder now. A baby cried somewhere in economy, then quieted. Outside the oval window, a ground crew truck rolled past under gray New York light. Lawson leaned closer to Ethan. Sir, I am going to give you a clear instruction. Accept the accommodation offered by the purser. Stop questioning the crew, and allow this flight to depart. Ethan held his gaze. And if I do not stop asking why I was treated differently? Lawson's expression hardened. Then I will have to consider whether your behavior presents a disruption to the safe operation of this flight. There it was, the threat dressed in policy. Ethan heard a phone camera start recording behind him. A soft click, then another. The woman in the navy cardigan had her phone low in her lap. Her hand shook slightly, but she kept recording. Rebecca noticed and stiffened. Captain, she whispered, this is exactly what I mean. He is turning passengers against the crew. Ethan looked at her. No, your actions are doing that. The words struck clean. Rebecca's face flushed red. Lawson straightened. Mr. Brooks, this is your final warning. Ethan's phone buzzed again. He glanced down. Natalie's message filled the screen. Legal notified. HR Director Diane Lawson is reviewing complaints now. Surveillance live feed confirmed. Audio is active in premium cabin and galley area. Ethan almost smiled at the last name. Diane Lawson. No relation to the captain, as far as he knew. But in a few minutes, that name might matter more than his stripes. He placed the phone on the tray table, screen down. "Captain," Ethan said quietly, "I am asking you to pause." Lawson's jaw flexed. "This aircraft is not a courtroom." "No," Ethan said. "But it is still a place where people are responsible for what they do." The cabin went still again. No one spoke. Even Rebecca stopped moving. For one slow second, Lawson looked uncertain. He could feel the passengers watching. He could feel the story slipping out of the shape his crew had given it. Then pride made the decision for him. He keyed the radio clipped near his shoulder. "Gate operations. This is Captain Lawson on Liberty Air 347. We may need ground security at the aircraft door." A breath passed through the cabin. Sharp, collective. Ethan looked out the window, then back at the captain. His voice was steady. "Once you call security on a passenger for asking about discrimination, Captain, you cannot pretend this is only about a sandwich anymore." Lawson's eyes narrowed. Rebecca looked away. And behind the galley curtain, the hidden camera kept recording everything. The word security changed the air, faster than turbulence ever could. Rebecca's shoulders relaxed. Just a little, as if the captain had handed her back control. Kevin looked toward the front door with the eager tension of a man waiting for backup. Angela Reed stared at her tablet, pretending to review notes, but her thumb was not moving. She knew this had crossed a line. Ethan knew it too. He had spent most of his life learning where lines were drawn. Some were written in contracts, some in law, some in the quiet pause before a person decided whether to see your humanity or only your skin. Captain Lawson stood over him, waiting for fear to do what authority had not. But Ethan did not rise. He did not argue. He only picked up his phone. "Sir," Lawson said, "sharper now. I told you to stop using your device." Ethan looked at him. "We are still at the gate. The aircraft door is open. Passengers are using phones throughout the cabin." The captain's jaw tightened. "That is not the point." "It keeps becoming not the point," Ethan said. A few passengers shifted. Someone behind him whispered, "He's right." Rebecca heard it. Her eyes snapped toward the sound. Robert Whitman leaned forward again, both hands on his cane now. He had not needed the cane while boarding, but he held it like an anchor. "Captain," Robert said, "I strongly suggest you slow this down." Lawson turned toward him with forced patience. "Sir, I have the situation under control." "No," Robert said. "You have a situation. You do not have it under control." The sentence cut through first class with the calm force of truth. For a moment, Lawson looked as if he might answer. Then the cabin door area stirred. Two airport security officers stepped aboard with a gate supervisor behind them. One officer was a tall black woman in her 50s, named Officer Marlene Carter. The other, younger and broad-shouldered, wore the careful expression of someone trained to stay neutral in a room full of tension. Officer Carter looked around. She saw the captain, the crew, the phones recording, the untouched sandwich. Ethan sitting still in seat 2A. Her face revealed almost nothing, but her eyes slowed on the tray. "What seems to be the issue?" she asked. Rebecca stepped forward before Ethan could speak. "This passenger has been disruptive since boarding," she said quickly. "He is refusing reasonable accommodations, challenging crew authority, and upsetting other passengers." "That is not true," the woman in the navy cardigan said. Her voice trembled, but she said it. Everyone turned. She swallowed and held her phone against her chest. "I have been sitting here the whole time. He has been calm. He asked about spoiled food. That is all." Rebecca's face hardened. "Mom, please do not interfere." The woman's eyes watered, but she did not lower her gaze. "My husband was a school principal for 30 years, she said softly. "I know what it sounds like when someone is being blamed for reacting to mistreatment." The words were not loud. They did not need to be. They carried a life inside them. Ethan looked at her, and something in his expression softened. "Thank you," he said. Officer Carter turned to Ethan. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass and identification?" "Of course." Ethan handed them over without hesitation. Captain Lawson watched closely, still expecting some crack in the story, some missing piece that would justify the call. Officer Carter checked the boarding pass, then the ID, then the seat. "Mr. Ethan Brooks," she said. Seat 2A, first class. Yes. She handed the documents back. Were you asked to leave the aircraft? Not directly, Ethan said. I was told to stop asking why I was being treated differently. Then security was called. Kevin scoffed. That is not what happened. Robert Whitman lifted his hand. It is exactly what happened. The younger officer looked at the sandwich and frowned. Is that the meal in question? Ethan nodded. Rebecca snapped. It is a catering issue. Officer Carter looked at her. Did anyone replace it? Silence. A simple question. No one answered. Angela finally spoke, her voice tight. We offered a business class alternative. Officer Carter's eyes moved to the first-class plates around the cabin. Why not a first-class alternative? Again, silence. The truth was becoming visible because people were asking plain questions. Ethan's phone buzzed. Natalie again. He glanced down. Diane has full complaint history. 5 prior reports name Rebecca. 2 name Kevin. Legal says surveillance is recording clearly. Board liaison notified. Ethan closed his eyes for one brief second. Not in victory. In grief. Because this was no longer only his humiliation. It was a file. A pattern. A stack of dismissed voices. People who had complained and been softened into vouchers. People who had been told there was insufficient evidence. People who had gone home wondering if speaking up had mattered at all. He opened his eyes. Officer Carter, he said, I will cooperate with any lawful instruction. But I will not pretend spoiled food and unequal treatment are a misunderstanding, simply because that is more convenient. Officer Carter held his gaze. There was respect there now. Quiet, human, earned. Before she could respond, Captain Lawson's radio crackled. The gate agent's voice came through. Captain, operations wants an update. We are approaching departure hold. Lawson grabbed the radio. Tell operations we have a passenger disruption in first class. Ethan looked at him. Captain, be careful. Lawson froze. Ethan's voice dropped. Because that statement is now part of the record. Rebecca's face went pale. Not because she understood everything, but because she finally sensed that Ethan Brooks had not been powerless. He had only been patient. Rebecca heard the word record and stopped breathing for half a second. It was small, almost invisible, but Ethan saw it. So did Angela Reed. The purser's eyes lifted toward the ceiling panels, then dropped back down as if the thought itself frightened her. She had been briefed on the new quality monitoring system during mandatory training. She had signed the acknowledgement, so had every crew member on that plane. Rebecca either forgot or believed it would never matter. Officer Carter stepped slightly into the aisle, placing herself between Ethan and the crew without making it look like a confrontation. Captain, she said, from what I can see, this passenger has valid identification, a valid seat assignment, and witnesses saying he has remained calm. Unless there is a safety issue, I do not see grounds to remove him. Captain Lawson's face hardened. My crew reports a disturbance. With respect, Officer Carter said, crew reports still need facts. The cabin went quiet enough to hear the air vents. Kevin shifted his weight. Rebecca looked at the captain, waiting for him to rescue the story. Lawson did not like being corrected in his own aircraft, especially not in front of passengers. His authority had been built on quick decisions, clear commands, and people moving when he spoke. But this was not a storm cell. This was not a mechanical fault. This was a human problem, and human problems do not always obey rank. Ethan watched him wrestle with that. Then Ethan's phone rang. Not a buzz this time. A call. The screen showed Natalie Price. Lawson snapped, "Do not answer that." Ethan looked at Officer Carter. "We are still at the gate," she said calmly. "He may take a call." Ethan answered and put the phone to his ear. Natalie. Her voice was low, urgent, controlled. "Ethan, Diane has confirmed the complaint history. 5 prior formal complaints named Rebecca Hayes. 2 named Kevin Miller. 3 were closed as unsubstantiated. 2 ended in travel credits. No disciplinary action." Ethan closed his eyes for one slow breath. Behind his composure, something old and heavy moved through him. He thought of people he would never meet. A grandmother flying to see a sick son. A veteran using his miles for a final vacation. A young executive in her first-class seat, wondering why the smiles stopped when they reached her row. All of them filing complaints into a system that translated pain into case numbers. Natalie continued. Legal is reviewing the live feed. Diane is asking whether you want her to call operations directly. Ethan opened his eyes. Not yet. Rebecca's head jerked slightly. She had heard enough to understand there was a Diane. A legal team. A live feed. Kevin whispered, "What is this?" No one answered him. Ethan ended the call and placed the phone on his tray table. Captain Lawson stared at him. "Who are you calling?" Ethan looked up. "Someone who can verify the record." Rebecca stepped forward, voice thin. "This is ridiculous. He is clearly trying to intimidate the crew." Robert Whitman turned in his seat. "No, Mom. He is trying to protect himself from a crew that keeps changing the story." Rebecca's mouth opened, then closed. The woman in the navy cardigan nodded, her eyes damp now. Angela Reed finally spoke, very softly. "Rebecca, step back." Rebecca looked stunned. "What?" "Step back," Angela repeated. Now, it was the first responsible thing Angela had done all afternoon, and everyone heard the shift. Rebecca took one step back, but her pride would not let her stop. Under her breath, she muttered, "All this over a sandwich. Some people just know how to play the victim." The words were quiet, but not quiet enough. Officer Carter's eyes sharpened. Robert Whitman slowly removed his glasses. The woman in the cardigan whispered, "Oh my God." Ethan did not move. He had expected cruelty to hide. Instead, it had stepped into the aisle. Captain Lawson's face changed, not with outrage, but with calculation. He knew the words were bad. He knew passengers had heard them. But he also knew admitting that would mean admitting he had backed the wrong side. So he chose control. He keyed his radio again. "Operations, this is Captain Lawson. We are returning the aircraft to inactive boarding status. Passenger conflict unresolved. Request permission to deplane one passenger for operational safety." Officer Carter turned toward him. "Captain, I do not recommend that." Lawson ignored her. Ethan's voice was quiet. "Captain Lawson." The captain looked down. Ethan held his gaze. "If you remove me from this aircraft after what was just said in front of witnesses, this will no longer be a service complaint. It will become a corporate crisis." Rebecca let out a brittle laugh. "Corporate crisis? Please." Ethan finally reached into his jacket and removed a matte black business card. He did not hand it to Rebecca. He handed it to Officer Carter. She read it. Her eyes changed. Not dramatically, professionally, but enough. She looked back at Ethan. "Mr. Brooks," she said, slower now. "Are you affiliated with Liberty Air Corporate?" The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Ethan nodded once. "I am one of the principal private investors behind the airline." Rebecca's face drained. Kevin went still. Angela's tablet lowered in her hands. Captain Lawson did not speak. For the first time since he entered the cabin, he looked less like a commander, and more like a man realizing the passenger he had tried to remove had been watching the whole company from seat 2A. Captain Lawson stared at the business card as if the small black rectangle had changed the shape of the aircraft. It had. The cabin stayed frozen. No one coughed. No one shifted. Even the air vents seemed quieter. Officer Carter handed the card back to Ethan with both hands, the way professionals handle something that has become evidence. "Thank you, Mr. Brooks," she said. Rebecca's lips parted, but no sound came out. Kevin looked at Angela Reed, waiting for direction. Angela had gone pale, not ghost white, not theatrical. Just the drained, sick look of someone remembering every training module she had rushed through, and every warning she had ignored. Captain Lawson recovered first. "Mr. Brooks," he said, his tone suddenly more careful. "If that is true, then this should be handled through corporate channels." Ethan placed the card on the tray table beside the untouched sandwich. "That is what I asked for before you called security." Lawson swallowed. Rebecca found her voice. "He never told us who he was." Robert Whitman turned his head slowly. "My God," he said. "Listen to yourself." Rebecca looked offended. "What?" Robert's voice sharpened. "You should not need to know a man is powerful before you treat him with decency." The words hit harder than any accusation. The woman in the navy cardigan lowered her phone. Her hand was still trembling, but her voice was clear. "That is the whole point." Rebecca's face flushed again, but this time shame and fear were tangled together. Ethan felt the moment deep in his chest. That was the lesson most companies put on posters and forgot in practice. Respect was not a reward for status. It was the starting point. It belonged to the retired nurse in economy, the young father traveling with a crying child, the woman who saved for years to sit in first class once, the person whose name no one recognized. Officer Carter stepped back toward the aircraft door and spoke quietly to the gate supervisor. Captain Lawson watched her, then turned to Angela. "Get operations on the line." Angela nodded too fast and walked toward the galley. Kevin followed, but Rebecca stayed in place, eyes locked on Ethan's phone. She knew now that the device was not just a passenger recording a bad moment. It was a doorway to people above her. Ethan's phone buzzed again. "Natalie," he answered. "Go ahead." "Diane is on with operations now," Natalie said. "Legal has captured the live cabin feed. They have Rebecca's last comment, the captain's removal request, and the security call. Board liaison is asking whether you want the flight held." Ethan looked around the cabin. Passengers were watching him now with a different kind of silence. Some embarrassed, some curious, some quietly supportive. A few looked annoyed at the delay, checking watches and phones as if justice had become an inconvenience. That bothered him. Not because they were wrong to care about their time. Time mattered. Missed meetings mattered. Missed connections mattered. But prejudice always spread beyond the person it targeted. It delayed flights. It poisoned workplaces. It taught witnesses to stay quiet. It made everyone smaller. "Hold the flight," Ethan said. "But do not make this about me alone. Ask Diane to review prior complaints immediately. I want names, dates, outcomes, and who closed the files." Natalie paused. "Understood. And Natalie, yes? Tell legal to preserve everything. No edits, no gaps. Already done." He ended the call. From the galley, voices rose behind the curtain. Rebecca turned sharply toward the sound. Angela's voice came first, low and tense. "Yes, I understand. Yes, he is on board. Yes, the investor." "No, he has not been removed." Then Kevin, whispering too loudly. "Are they saying the cameras recorded the galley too?" Angela snapped. "Stop talking. Too late again." Robert Whitman closed his eyes briefly. Officer Carter heard it. So did the younger officer. So did half the cabin. Captain Lawson's face tightened. He stepped toward the galley, but before he reached it, his radio crackled. "Captain Lawson, this is Liberty Operations. Hold position. Do not remove any passenger." "Corporate response team is en route to the aircraft." Lawson froze. The voice was calm. Official, unmistakable. Rebecca looked as if the floor had dropped under her. Kevin whispered, "Corporate response team?" Angela stepped out from behind the curtain with her tablet clutched to her chest. "Captain," she said, barely above a whisper. "They are sending Diane Lawson." The captain's eyes flicked toward Ethan. Same last name, different power. Ethan did not smile. There was no joy in watching fear replace arrogance, only a heavy confirmation of what he had always known. Systems did not change because people felt ashamed. They changed when truth could no longer be denied. A soft chime rang through the cabin. The jet bridge door opened wider. 3 figures stepped aboard from the terminal. A woman in a navy suit led them, late 40s, calm eyes, no wasted movement. Behind her came a Liberty Air legal officer and a ground operations manager. Diane Lawson stopped at the entrance of first class. Her gaze moved across the cabin, over the cameras, the phones, the crew, the tray, and finally Ethan. "Mr. Brooks," she said, her voice steady but grave, "I am sorry we are meeting under these circumstances." Then she turned to the captain. "Captain Lawson, no one is being removed from this aircraft except the personnel under investigation." Diane Lawson's words did not explode through the cabin. They did something worse. They settled. Captain Lawson stared at her as if she had spoken in a language he understood, but refused to accept. Rebecca's hand moved to the scarf at her neck. Kevin took half a step backward. Angela Reed stood near the galley, frozen between loyalty to her crew and the evidence she knew was waiting on a server. "Diane," the captain said carefully, "this is my aircraft." Diane met his eyes. "And this is a company aircraft operating under company policy, federal law, and documented conduct standards. Your command authority does not erase an internal investigation." The legal officer beside her, a lean man named Martin Cole, opened a tablet. "We have preserved audio and video from the premium cabin and galley area," he said. We have also received witness statements from passengers currently on board. Rebecca's voice cracked. Witness statements? Already? Robert Whitman lifted his chin. I gave one. The woman in the navy cardigan raised her hand slightly. So did I. A younger passenger near the window said, I uploaded my video to the company link they sent. He never raised his voice. Kevin rubbed his face. This is getting ridiculous. Diane turned to him. Mr. Miller, I strongly recommend you stop speaking unless asked a direct question. He went quiet. For the first time all afternoon, the crew was learning the discipline they had demanded from Ethan. Diane moved closer to seat 2A. Her expression softened, but only slightly. She was not there to perform sympathy. She was there to act. Mr. Brooks, she said, I want to apologize. Not with corporate language. Personally. What happened here should not have happened to any passenger. Ethan looked at her. I appreciate that. But I do not want this handled as one bad interaction. Diane nodded. It will not be. Rebecca made a sharp sound. You have not even heard our side. Martin Cole looked down at his tablet. Ms. Hayes, your side is included in the recording, including your statement that some people know how to play the victim, including your earlier comment in the galley about Mr. Brooks not fitting the profile of a first-class passenger. Rebecca's face went blank, then red, then pale. I was frustrated, she said. People say things. Ethan's voice was quiet. Yes, they do. Those 3 words carried the weight of every person who had ever been told to forget what was said because the speaker had not meant to get caught. Diane turned to Angela Reed. Ms. Reed, did you observe the meal served to Mr. Brooks? Angela swallowed. Yes. Did it meet first-class service standards? No. Did you replace it with an equivalent first-class meal? Angela's eyes flicked toward Ethan. No. Why? Angela opened her mouth, closed it. Her professional training searched for a safe phrase, but there was none. I failed to take control of the situation, she said at last. It was not enough, but it was honest. Ethan watched her shoulders drop after saying it. There was a strange mercy in truth. It did not erase harm, but it stopped adding to it. Diane turned back to the captain. Captain Lawson, based on the available evidence, you are being relieved from this flight pending investigation. A reserve captain is on the way. The words struck him harder than shouting could have. Relieved? He said. Yes. I have flown for this airline for 31 years, and that experience makes your choices today more serious, not less. His face tightened. For a moment, Ethan saw the man beneath the uniform, older, frightened, angry that the rules he had used to command others had turned toward him. Rebecca stepped forward. You cannot suspend us in front of passengers. Diane's eyes moved to her. You participated in the conduct in front of passengers. Silence. Clean. Complete. Officer Carter remained near the door, steady and watchful. She did not smile. No one did. This was accountability, not entertainment. Rebecca looked around the cabin for support and found none. The same passengers who had watched Ethan being questioned now watched her being questioned. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked sad. A few looked ashamed. That mattered. Shame, when used honestly, could become education. Diane spoke again. Miss Hayes, Mr. Miller, Captain Lawson, please gather your personal belongings and deplane with the ground manager. Your credentials will be temporarily suspended pending a formal review. Kevin whispered. This is my career. Ethan heard him. And for the first time, Kevin sounded human. Scared. Small. Ethan looked at him and thought of how easily Kevin had tried to make him feel the same way. That is why authority must be handled carefully, Ethan said. Kevin looked at him, but did not answer. Rebecca passed Ethan's seat with her bag in hand. Her eyes burned with anger, but behind it was something else now. Recognition. Not of Ethan's dignity. She should have seen that from the start. Recognition of consequence. As the 3 crew members stepped onto the jet bridge, the cabin exhaled. But Ethan did not relax. The sandwich still sat on the tray. The delay was still real. The damage had been witnessed by everyone. Diane turned to him. A replacement crew can have this flight ready shortly. But before that, I believe the passengers deserve to hear what happened. Ethan looked down the aisle. Faces waited. Phones lowered. Eyes open now. He nodded. Yes, he said. They do. The replacement crew boarded quietly, without the usual polished cheer. They understood the cabin had become something fragile. The new captain was a woman in her early 60s named Linda Marshall. Gray hair tucked beneath her cap, clear eyes, a steady voice that did not need volume to carry authority. She stepped into first class, looked first at the passengers, then at Ethan, then at the tray still sitting in front of him. Her face tightened, not with shock, with recognition. Some leaders see a problem and worry about blame. Others see people and worry about harm. Captain Marshall belonged to the second kind. "Mr. Brooks," she said, stopping beside his seat. "I am sorry. My crew and I will do everything we can to get everyone to San Francisco safely and with dignity." Ethan stood to shake her hand. "Thank you, Captain." She looked him in the eye. No one should have to earn dignity at 30,000 feet. That sentence moved through Ethan more deeply than he expected. For the first time all afternoon, his throat tightened. He nodded, but did not trust himself to answer. Diane Lawson stood near the front with the intercom handset in her hand. Martin Cole spoke quietly with the gate supervisor. Officer Carter remained by the aircraft door, no longer needed for enforcement, but still present as a witness to the ending of one moment and the beginning of another. Passengers watched as the new flight attendants moved through the cabin. One removed Ethan's tray with careful hands, as if handling something contaminated in more ways than one. Another brought bottled water and a clean linen napkin. "Sir," she said gently, "would you like a few minutes before we serve anything else?" It was a simple question. Choice. After an hour of being controlled, choice felt like respect. "Yes," Ethan said. "Thank you." Diane approached him. "Whenever you are ready." Ethan looked down the aisle. First class was listening. Beyond the curtain, economy was restless. People had missed calls, meetings, rides, connections. Some had only heard pieces. Others had filmed the worst of it. All of them were now part of the same story. Ethan took the handset. The cabin speaker clicked softly. His voice filled the aircraft. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ethan Brooks. I want to take a moment to explain why this flight has been delayed." The cabin went still. Ethan kept his tone low and steady. "I boarded today as a passenger. I had a paid first-class ticket. I had a confirmed meal order. I expected what every passenger should expect from an airline. Safe travel, fair service, basic respect." He paused. A few passengers lowered their eyes. Instead, I was denied the service I paid for, served food that appeared spoiled. And when I asked reasonable questions, I was described as disruptive. Some of you saw that. Some of you spoke up. I want to thank you. Robert Whitman bowed his head slightly. The woman in the navy cardigan wiped her cheek. Ethan continued. "What happened today was not only about a sandwich. It was about the way people can be judged before they are heard. It was about how quickly a calm question can be turned into a threat when the person asking it does not fit someone's idea of who belongs." No one moved. Even the flight attendants stood still. "I am one of Liberty Air's principal private investors. I helped support changes in this airline because I believed it could become better. But belief is not enough. Policies are not enough. Training slides are not enough. A company becomes what it tolerates." The words landed heavily. "This incident is being reviewed. The employees involved have been removed from this flight pending investigation. But I want to be clear. Accountability should not depend on a passenger having power. It should not depend on a business card. It should not depend on cameras. Every person on this aircraft deserved better from the beginning." A low murmur moved through the cabin. Not anger now, recognition. Ethan's voice slowed. "I am sorry for the delay this caused all of you. Your time matters. Your plans matter. And discrimination, even when aimed at one person, affects everyone around it. It creates fear. It creates silence. It creates harm that travels farther than we think." Diane looked at him, her face grave. "So Liberty Air will be refunding every ticket on this flight. Every passenger will also receive travel credit, equal to the value of a future round-trip domestic flight. And our executive office will personally assist anyone whose connection or schedule has been affected." Gasps moved through the aircraft. Someone in economy said, "Are you serious?" Ethan did not smile. "This is not a prize. It is responsibility." He let the words breathe. "And after we land, I will ask our board to review every discrimination complaint from the past 5 years. Not to protect the company. To protect the people who trusted us to do better. He handed the handset back to Diane. For a moment there was silence. Then Robert Whitman stood slowly, with one hand on his cane. He began to clap. One clap, then another. The woman in the navy cardigan joined him. Then first class, then economy. The sound filled the cabin, not like celebration, but like release. Ethan sat back down by the window, exhausted in a way no sleep could fix. Outside, the runway stretched ahead. Inside, something had shifted, not healed, not yet, but seen. The flight to San Francisco arrived 2 hours late, but no one rushed out of the cabin the way passengers usually did. They stood slowly, quietly, as if leaving too fast would disrespect what they had all witnessed. Ethan Brooks remained in seat 2A until the aisle cleared. His jacket was folded over one arm. His phone was full of messages from the board, from legal, from Natalie, from people who suddenly understood that one spoiled sandwich had exposed something much larger. At the aircraft door, Captain Linda Marshall stopped him. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "I hope the rest of the flight gave you at least a little peace." Ethan looked back at the cabin. The same seat, the same walls, a different feeling. "It gave me clarity," he said. In the terminal, Diane Lawsonson was waiting with a small executive team. No cameras, no press conference. Just tired faces and serious folders. "We reviewed the footage during the flight," Diane said. "It is clear. The meal, the comments, the false disruption report, all of it." Martin Cole added, "Rebecca Hayes, Kevin Miller, and Captain Richard Lawson are suspended pending termination review. Angela Reed will be placed on administrative leave and required to cooperate with the investigation." Ethan nodded. The words mattered, but they did not make him feel lighter. Justice was not joy. Sometimes justice was only the moment when the truth stopped being ignored. The next morning, the Liberty Air boardroom was silent. On screen, the footage played once. No one asked to see it again. Rebecca's cold smile, Kevin's dismissive stare, Captain Lawson calling security, Ethan sitting still with spoiled food in front of him. Then the complaints appeared. Not one, not two, years of them. Passengers describing the same pattern in different words. Cold service, extra questioning, missing meals, dismissed concerns, travel credits instead of accountability. Ethan stood at the head of the table. "This company did not fail because one employee made one cruel choice," he said. "It failed because too many people learned that ignoring cruelty was easier than confronting it." No one interrupted. Not this time. By noon, the board approved a full review of past discrimination complaints, mandatory retraining for all customer-facing employees, an independent passenger equity panel, and a new rule requiring every serious complaint to be reviewed by more than one department. By evening, Liberty Air released a public statement. It did not hide behind vague language. It acknowledged discriminatory treatment. It apologized to passengers. It promised reform with dates, names, and oversight. 6 months later, Ethan boarded Liberty Air Flight 347 again. Same route. Same seat. The morning light through the window was soft and gold. The cabin smelled of coffee and clean leather. A new flight attendant, a woman named Sarah Bennett, greeted every passenger with the same steady warmth. When she reached Ethan, she smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Brooks. We have your pre-ordered meal confirmed, and your Macallan 18 will be served after takeoff. Would you like water before we depart?" Ethan looked at her face. No suspicion, no performance. "Just service, yes," he said. "Thank you." A few minutes later, Robert Whitman appeared in the aisle, moving slowly with his cane. Ethan looked up in surprise. Robert smiled. "Couldn't resist taking this route again," he said. "Wanted to see if the airline learned anything." Ethan chuckled softly. "And?" Robert glanced around the cabin. "So far, I'd say somebody finally listened." As the plane lifted above New York, Ethan looked out at the clouds. He thought about power. Not the loud kind, not the kind that humiliates, the kind that protects, the kind that opens a door and keeps it open for the next person. He had been underestimated. Then he had been heard. But the real victory was not that people finally learned who he was. The real victory was that, One day, who he was would not be required for him to be treated with dignity. Because respect should never depend on a title, a suit, a bank account, or a business card. It should begin the moment a person walks through the door. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who still believes silence keeps the peace. Sometimes, speaking up is the only way peace becomes honest. Subscribe for more stories about dignity, justice, and the quiet courage it takes to stand your ground.